Hello, my name is Paul Austin, and I'm going to be reading from my memoir, Something for the Pain. It's about being an emergency physician. This is nonfiction, and the essay I'm reading today is Tucker Put His Gun to His Head. Barry, the senior paramedic, was at the head of the gurney as they wheeled into the trauma bay of our ER. "This guy shot himself," Barry said. "It's a mess. It's a goddamn mess." One of the other paramedics pumped on the guy's chest while a firefighter fumbled to undo the yellow straps securing him to their gurney. Barry wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist, careful to keep the blood of his gloved hand from touching his face. He stood there in the kitchen, told his mom, "I'm gonna shoot myself," and then boom! Barry snorted and shook his head. "We couldn't intubate him, so we've been using a bag ventilator. Sorry, Doc." "No problem," I said. "Let's move him over to our stretcher." I tried to slip a plastic tube down his throat and into his windpipe. His head jostled with the rhythm of chest compressions, and blood and vomit welled up into the back of the mouth. I tried to suction it with a suction catheter, but it kept getting plugged with bits of yellow-white, cheesy stuff. "Bag him up some," I said to the respiratory therapist. "I'm going to try to suction him with a straight tubing. Maybe it won't get clogged." As she squeezed the bag to force air into his lungs, a flatulent sound and a fine red mist came from a bullet hole just above the man's ear. "Damn," the respiratory therapist said. "What's that?" I stood and stared, perplexed by the small bloody geyser coming from the side of the man's head with each squeeze of the ambu bag. Then it occurred to me, the bullet must have angled down through the skull and through the brain and then through the roof of the mouth. I pulled the facepiece off and looked inside, and sure enough, there was a jagged hole through the soft palate. I looked over at the paramedics. "How long's he been down?" Barry looked at his watch. 25, 30 minutes. "Did he ever have a pulse?" Barry shook his head. "This is not a survivable injury." I looked around the room at each person. "Unless anyone else has any ideas, I'm going to call it." It's a team effort, and I like to give everyone a chance to speak up before ending resuscitation. Beth looked at the clock on the wall. Time of death, 7:52. She spoke clearly and loudly so everyone would document the same time of death. I just completed the death certificate when Beth came over. "The sister's in the family room," she said. I looked up. "Anyone else?" "Just her." "Let me go to the bathroom, and then we'll go talk with her." I splashed my face, made sure there wasn't any blood on my scrubs, and then came back to the nurse's station, and Beth and I walked to the family room. A thin woman was sitting with her knees together and her hands in her lap. Her face was calm. I sat down in the chair next to hers and introduced myself. "You are his sister," she said. "Do you know what happened today?" "Tucker's been talking about shooting himself for years," she said, her voice soft. "Today he told Mama he was going to do it, and Mama told him to talk like he had some sense." She took a deep breath. "Tucker put his gun to his head and shot himself." "I'm sorry to have to tell you, but in spite of all that the rescue squad and the nurses and the doctors could do, we could not save him." She stared at my face without reacting. "Until you use the word dead or died, some families cling to the hope that the void looming into their lives isn't really there. Until you say dead, their daughter, son, husband, wife, friend, lover may still be alive." "We did our best," I said, "but Tucker died." She raised her shoulders again. "Tucker's been talking about doing this for years. He drinks. His liver's gone, his pancreas is gone, his kidneys are going. He hadn't worked in years." She shook her head. "He just stays around Mama's house and drinks and talks about killing himself. Mama's torn up about it, but we figured it would happen sooner or later. I just hate that he did it right in front of her." She gestured towards the floor. "You know, right there in the kitchen." We all stared at the floor. I couldn't think of anything to say that would help her, and sometimes sitting quietly seems the most respectful thing to do. I waited several moments and then gestured towards Beth. Beth will help with the arrangements. Telephone, funeral home, friends, family. Do you want to see the body? I kept my voice as gentle and matter-of-fact as I could. Some people do, some people don't. Either way would be okay. The sister shook her head. I already saw it at home, in Mama's kitchen. Beth and one of the other nurses washed Tucker's body, wrapped it in a sheet, and zipped it into a plastic bag. A nursing assistant rolled him down to the morgue. The ward clerk asked Carlos from housekeeping to mop the floor. The smears of Tucker's blood were biohazard, a potential broth of AIDS and hepatitis that had to be cleaned up. Walking backward, Carlos swabbed the floor, the mop fanning out smoothly side to side. When he was done, the floor had a subtle sheen, ready for the next damaged person the paramedics would bring us. I didn't know who would clean the floor in Tucker's house. Probably his sister, maybe his mother. Would she scrub every inch of her kitchen floor, trying to expunge all traces of the shock and pain she'd been left with? Or perhaps would she hesitate? As if a spotless kitchen floor would be a betrayal, an erasure of Tucker's existence, as if she had discarded his birth certificate, or a grade school picture, or a locket she had saved from his first haircut. Thank you.